Okay. So what we'll do is, if you log in, then you have to log out in one of the connections. Okay, Sandeep. How are
Yeah,
you
sure.
using?
I'll just try to log in through laptop because that will be better.
Okay. Log in through laptop. I'll wait for you. Log off from here. Log off. Log off from this device and log in from laptop.
Yeah.
Then I'll speak about the modeling techniques part of it. Okay. So you can mute yourself, and all of you can mute yourself, and if at all, if you have any questions, you can always use your chat window. So just say hello to me if I'm audible to you loud and clear. Just say hello. You can use the chat window and perhaps just say yes if I'm very clearly audible to you. See, again, I'm saying hello in the chat window. If possible, just kindly respond and convey to me if my voice is loud and clear to everyone. I believe it should be audible to everyone now. I think that my audio is visible to. Sorry, my audio is audible to everyone. Yes.
Yes.
And my screen is also visible to everyone. So, welcome all on behalf of Yes Energy Solutions. Before I go into the session number 4, we'll just have a brief recap of what we have covered up till now. Now, in the previous 3 sessions, what we had done, in fact, we can see a session synopsis out here, a session layout. We discussed about the role of the business analyst, and also discussed about what is business analysis, the definition perspective. Business analysis can be done at what all levels it can be done at. We also discussed about stakeholders. We also discussed about techniques to profile the stakeholders and further manage the stakeholders by means of profiling the stakeholders and devising a strategy as to how a particular set of stakeholder or a profile stakeholder can be handled. And on top of that, in the role of the BA, in the first session, we also discussed about the key aspect, which is about the skill set required for a BA. And when I spoke about the skill set required for the BA, I basically segregated them into different buckets. When I talk about the different buckets, I segregated them into those buckets were, like a business. It's good to have a huge plus if a business analyst definitely has huge domain knowledge. That's one aspect of it. And apart from that, as a business analyst, if he's getting engaged in a particular project, so basically he needs to understand as to that particular project is following which kind of a methodology. Now, when we talk about a methodology, or more so, I use a particular term called a framework. We need to clearly understand as to how projects are going to be developed in the waterfall model, which is more like plan-driven and change-driven approach. Mute yourself, plan-driven and change-driven approaches, or more so, we can also use terms such as predictive and adaptive approaches. Now, apart from this, in order to perform business analysis, a business analyst would also need to be very well aware of elicitation techniques, analysis techniques, documentation techniques, verification and validation, and also how do you go about obtaining consensus on the solutions that you propose. And in that context, what are the soft skills which are required for a BA? I believe that also we had discussed in session number 1. Now, when we spoke about session number 2, we spoke about the predictive and adaptive methodologies, where we spoke about what exactly we mean by a waterfall approach, and how do you go about performing or executing a particular project if it has to follow a waterfall approach. But in order to do so, before that, we also discussed about if there is a specific project, on what basis or rational a decision would be made, whether it should be following a waterfall model or an agile approach, and what kind of projects are suitable to be developed on waterfall or an agile approach is also something that we discussed about. And a guideline or the nature of the projects which are regulatory in nature, whether all the requirements are basically provided by a regulatory body. For such kind of the project, it makes it wiser to go for a waterfall approach. And in the projects where you feel that the requirements are going to be exploratory in nature, in such cases you can definitely go for agile approach. So this is what we had discussed in traditional agile, and we also discussed about the roles and how the work is performed, what exactly is the release plan, what exactly is the sprint plan, what exactly is the sprint review. All those aspects were discussed in session number 2. And then subsequently we moved on to requirements. And when I spoke about requirement, we started with a very definition of a requirement. And then we spoke about the different classification of requirement as according to IIBA. And that's where we spoke about business requirement. We also spoke about stakeholder requirement. We also spoke about solution requirements, which are further segregated into functional and non-functional requirements. And there's also one another bucket of requirement which we spoke about. That would be transition requirement. Transition requirements are more like one-time requirements, and those also are the requirements that we basically spoke about. So this is just a brief synopsis of what we had discussed in our previous sessions, what we had done pertaining to module number 1, module number 2, and module number 3. Now, today the agenda is going to be module number 4, which would be which the emphasis of the agenda would be mainly on making you aware of modeling techniques, and in the context of business analysis, where exactly these modeling techniques are applied and how they are applied, and what are the possible modeling techniques which are available as a toolkit for a business analyst to perform business analysis. So this is going to be the objective of this session. And first, we're going to divide this session into 2 parts, where the first part is going to focus on what are the modeling techniques which are available, identifying those modeling techniques, trying to understand about those modeling techniques in terms of what is its purpose, objective, in what circumstance and in what situation, which particular modeling technique is the best technique or a tool available for a business analyst to perform business analysis. So that's going to be the agenda for today's session. And all of you, just use your chat window, and please do let me know if my voice and audio is very clear to you. Just say yes to me once. If my okay, that's lovely. So this is what we discussed about, and when we speak about this, if you see, that's lovely. I have yes from most of them, and the audio is very clear. So when we speak about this modeling techniques, now first of all, let's try to figure out as to why a modeling technique is required, or in what context a business analyst would have to be using the modeling techniques. So The objectives of this session would be, making you understand as to why modeling techniques, and we also would be discussing about another aspect where we will be differentiating a difference between a model and diagram. We would also speak about modeling for as is and to be. When we speak about as is and to be, this is something that we discussed in our initial session also. So when you're performing business analysis, you're basically trying to understand an organizational or an enterprise architecture from an as is perspective, trying to figure out what are the business problems which are there existing in the as is, and then perhaps proposing business solutions. And those business solutions would become to be, and this to be should be helping you to achieve the business goals. We also spoke about a couple of things when we spoke about when I spoke about a solution, and that solution is basically the to be part of it, and that to be is basically nothing but the to be is nothing but a solution, and this solution is basically can be put into different buckets. When I'm talking about a bucket, you can put that into a make bucket, you can put that into a buy bucket, you can put that into a a lease bucket. You also have one more bucket which I spoke about, which is a predominant bucket, that is called enhance. And enhance can be two buckets, which is ROI and regulatory bucket. This is what I basically spoke about my initial session also. When it comes to conducting as is and to be steady, modeling techniques are heavily used by a business analyst. And what are the various types of models available to the discretion of BA, and how exactly he goes about applying those modeling techniques, in what scenario or in what context, which particular modeling technique would be a best one. That is where you basically go about applying your modeling techniques. So this is what would be the objective of today's session. And once I have been, once I explain about each particular modeling technique, I would also make, we would make you, or I would make you work on a case study where you're going to apply these modeling techniques and generate these models for that particular specific case study, which can be there in the banking and the financial domain. Or for the matter, we also have some other case studies related to other domains also. So, as previously also told, the objective of the session is twofold. One is to make you understand the concepts related to modeling techniques, and then making you apply those concepts with the help of the case study. So, when we talk about the models, why use models? Now, when we talk about these models, now any of the industry, if you see, or in any domain that you come across, now even in the domain of medical sciences, you must have seen doctors. When you go to a doctor, in front of a doctor's cabin, you will see so many charts hanging around. There will be a particular chart depicting a heart, or there will be a particular chart depicting a nerve, there will be a particular chart depicting a muscle structure. Now, why all those models are used in that domain of medical sciences? It is purely with the purpose of reducing complexity. When I say reducing complexity, please understand, a complex things can be made very simple by using a model. In fact, there is a saying, a picture speaks equivalent to 500 words written. So in that context, if you want to depict complex business processes in simple manner, you can definitely go for usage of modeling techniques. Like for instance, if you talk about depicting a workflow as to how exactly loan which is applied by a commercial entity or by a private entity, such as a bank account holder, for a particular loan, how it gets processed. A complete workflow related to that can be depicted as a workflow diagram. And another version of that in a UML, Unified Modeling Language, if I talk about, there is a one particular modeling technique which we call it as activity diagram, which is more or less like a workflow diagram. Activity diagrams will have decision boxes, your swim lanes, your joins, and also forking. So all such kind of depiction is possible through a workflow diagrams. So when you're trying to depict something, or when you're trying to comprehend your understanding and try to project that in simple terms, you can perhaps use modeling techniques. And these modeling techniques are also used to depict as-is and to-be states of the organization. So you can use as-is and to-be state. And if you have modeling techniques, you also can be talking about highlight areas of improvement and document process changes. So you may have an as-is process, let's say as-is process. In this as-is process, a loan processing is taking, let's say, 60 hours. And you want to, depict that as to why it is taking 60 hours, for which you can have an as-is workflow diagram. And in that as-is workflow diagram, you can do improvements in that as-is workflow diagram by customizing the processes, combining some processes, or knocking off some processes, whereby the same as-is diagram will undergo changes and it will become to-be workflow diagram. And this to-be workflow diagram, the objective out here is to basically help the organization to reduce the 60 hours to maybe 32 hours. So you can use this a particular modeling technique, which is basically for workflow diagrams. Modeling technique called workflow diagram, both depict as-is and to-be steady. So if you look at and try to figure out as to what is an as-is and what is a to-be state. As-is is the current state as to how you're basically conducting your the businesses, both in regards to your policies, policy procedures, and what exactly is your the business model. So it's practically boils down to how you're conducting your business as of now. And if you are trying to depict that, you can basically go for as-is study. If you talk about to-be is basically where you wish to reach, or what all modifications, or what all process improvisations, or what all bottlenecks or lacunas, or the shortcomings which are existing in your business processes that you might have to overcome. Or it can also be another initiative, which can be a business process innovation, where you are trying to do something very differently and trying to achieve your goals. So it can be any one of the initiatives, and in all the initiatives, to take the stakeholders into confidence, and try to project to the stakeholders as to how their current business processes, your entire aspects related to the business, how they are performing. You can depict that by using as-is diagram. And subsequently, modeling techniques can also be used in order to show cause where all the deficiencies are there in their current as-is, what are the the bottlenecks that they have, what are the problems that are there which are hampering their productivity or efficiency. Or you can also suggest to them think something which is very different, whereby they can do things in a completely different manner and achieve quantum leaps in terms of efficiency and productivity, which in turn will help them to achieve their business goals. So it can be any one of the ways. So as-is and to-be are key terms which are definitely spoken about when we talk in terms of business analysis. Both models are used when we have an existing business process. The reason being, if you have an existing business process, you are basically trying to depict that existing business process in terms of as-is first, and then once you have done that from as-is, you will try to depict that with the help of to-be. When I say to-be is nothing but This is the way you're doing things. This is how you're doing things. This is how, and this is how is leading to how has these many problems or shortcomings or bottlenecks, and we would like to eliminate that, and that becomes your tool. But if your business is entirely a new business, if the business is entirely new, then you definitely did not require as is. You can directly go to the business process. So when I had said initially 2, according to IIBA, so your IIBA has a International Institute of Business Analysis has a version, the doc version number 3. You know, when we talk about this version number 3, it talks about 50 techniques, and out of those 50 techniques, many techniques are, can be put into modeling techniques, and these 50 techniques can be used for both, elicitation and analysis and documentation. Elicitation, analysis, and documentation, both for as is and also for to be also. So there are multiple modeling techniques, multiple models which are advocated by, which are commonly used across the globe by multiple business, many business analysts, which have been amalgamated, and they are also part of those 50 techniques which are there. In this session, we'll discuss about the major modeling techniques which are available. And when we speak about these modeling techniques, we have put them into different buckets here. The bucket that we call it as the process models. If you want to depict the business processes, from as-is perspective and to-be perspective, so you can use these models which I mentioned out here. Your use case diagram and use case specifications. These are the two key deliverables that you used to see when we were speaking about waterfall model. And when I talk about waterfall predictive, in BRD document, business requirement document, you generally come across this use case diagram and use case specification. Now, when we speak about this use diagram and use case specification, use case diagram and use case specification are generally the techniques which are applied when you show cause interaction between users of the system and the system itself. And in this context, the user invokes a system for a specified output, and what all functions a user can invoke. And that, if you have to diagrammatically or through a model, if you have to show, you can go for a use case diagram. And when you talk about use case specification, there is no model. This is not a model. In fact, use case specification is a document. And in that document, what we do is, this is a particular use case, and a use case is generally a functionality. So it is basically, let's say, in an ATM machine, withdraw cash is a use case, and the actor is a customer. He is invoking withdraw cash. And when you talk about withdraw cash is subjected to multiple conditions, and these multiple conditions can be depicted as a normal flow, happy flow, or basic flow, all meaning the same thing. When I talk about this normal flow, happy flow, or basic flow, what exactly I mean is, this is basically to achieve your goal. You're traveling the optimal best path, and if you reach your goal by traveling this optimal best path, you're basically following a normal flow of events or basic flow of events, or some of the companies also call it as a happy flow. But having said that, you can still reach the goal, but you may have followed some alternatives. It is something like you have to travel from point A. This is the point B. These are the optimal path you can go for. This is the straight. If you have reached the straight one, it is normal flow, but there are chances that you may deviate from here, go on to this place, you may deviate from here, go on to this place, again you can come back here and you can go this. But still you have reached the goal. That is basically like you have reached the goal of reaching to B position. And in this context of my example which I spoke about, withdraw cash, you have to withdraw cash from the ATM. And if you are able to withdraw the cash from ATM successfully by following the optimum path, it's a basic flow. But while you are withdrawing the cash from ATM, it may be subjected to your every step may be subjected to a particular alternative. When I say an alternative, it is you insert a card, your PIN is not valid, so it will prompt you a message stating that PIN is not valid. That is alternate. You enter the PIN correctly, again it course corrects itself, and that again goes on to the the main path. So this normal, alternate, and exceptional paths, precondition and post conditions, is something that we basically speak about in use case specification. And now this use case diagram and use case specifications can be used in both the approaches, both in the predictive and adaptive approaches. As we go further, when we practically start working on our case studies, I'll give you examples as how use case models are also used in agile approaches also. But predominantly, from my experience, I very much can fathom and say that when we speak about waterfall model, to depict your functional requirements, they were heavily using use case diagram and use case specification, still very much prevalent. And you would see these modeling techniques, being present in most of the BRDs which are created. When I say BRD, I mean business requirement document. Now, the purpose when you have to go for use case diagram is when you have to show interaction with the users and the system as to how the users are using the system. And when they're using the system, that particular system in terms of the functionality, what all conditions it is subjected to, and those conditions can be documented in use case specifications such as normal flow, alternate flow, and exception flow. That's what we talk about use case specification. When you talk about workflow diagram, your activity diagram, very synonym. These both are very synonym. In UML, there is no diagram called workflow. In UML, you only have an activity diagram. When we speak about a workflow diagram and an activity diagram, very good, or one more model which is frequently used is called swim lane diagram also. So when I talk about the swim lane diagram, when I speak about a swim lane diagram, your workflow or activity or swim lane diagram, all of them can be used synonymously. If you want to depict a business process or a particular functionality end to end, you can definitely go for usage of these models, which I call it as workflow diagram, activity, and swim lane diagrams. And all are very, very synonym or similar to each other. All three models are very, very good modeling techniques which you can possibly use to depict a process. And definitely in most of the deliverables you will see, both in the agile as well as in waterfall, you will come across these models being used effectively. When I talk about functional decomposition is all about breaking your system into subparts. If you have a HR system, break the HR into smaller components and all. When you're breaking into smaller components, it becomes your functional decomposition. Relationship map is about how your system interacts with the external customers. Object state transition diagram is how your states of an object will undergo state changes. And more practical application of this particular model, I will show you with the help of a example which I have in my case study. Data flow diagrams, yes, how a data traverses or travels through a process and how many processes it is subjected to, input, process, output, what all data entities will be there, data storage will be there, what all entities will be there. It's also one very good modeling techniques which is used. When I say these modeling techniques, all modeling techniques are essentially used for your analysis purposes on the elicited information. So you elicit something and you basically try to analyze, and to do that analysis you will come across and use this modeling techniques. And all these modeling techniques, I have put them into one bucket called process models, where we are depicting a process from end-to-end perspective. Now, when I speak about information models, this is a this one information models is something as to how your data gets represented, or how your data is stored, managed, manipulated. And if you talk about any commercial application, will have a front end. This is the front end, but at the back you will have a database. And when you talk about this blueprint of a database, the blueprint of a database, in terms of a blueprint of a database, or you can also say it's a database schema, which is nothing but the blueprint of a database. And that blueprint of a database is nothing but your ER diagrams, or in other terms you call it as entity relationship diagrams. But you generally don't go to entity relationship diagram directly. You would have to start with conceptual data models, then break it down into logical, and then break it down to physical. Physical is about the tables and all. Now, an interesting question here is, who creates this information model? These are all database designers, are the people who are basically taking a lead role here. But a BA would have to contribute. A BA needs to have a comprehension ability as to what exactly are the data models and how many data models are there. Conceptual data model, logical data model, physical data model, and in what context, which particular data model, what's the purpose of each model, and if at all, if any modifications have to be done in terms of enhancements which are happening to your software project or an application, what all changes would have to be brought into the existing database design. That's where the business analyst key role it plays a very key role, where you have to sit down and interact with the database team and trying to make them understand as to what are the business requirements, and those business requirements or the business need would definitely necessitate changes to be brought into the database designs and all. So that's where BA would have to really have a, if I don't say a thorough, he's not a specialist database designer, but he has to have a comprehension ability. So when we speak about this information model, it's all about how you store the data, how you organize your data, how you relate the data, how you manipulate the data, and how you subject your data to a lot of transactions. And when you basically try to do this, you have to have a proper database design which can handle this, and that's where your information models come into picture, where you have a conceptual data model, you have a logical, and you have a physical data model. You start with a very high-level conceptual, then move on to ER diagrams. When I use a term called ER, I basically talk about entity relationship diagrams. Entity relationship diagrams, you talk about what are the entities, what is the primary key, what's the foreign key, what is a concatenated key, what is a what is a single value attribute, what is a multi-value attribute, what is a composite attribute, what is a normalization, how do you go about relating the entities one-to-one, one-to-many. When you try to do all that, that's basically comes into conceptual data model. And in order to do this, you can pretty much do them in the piece of paper, or you have sophisticated or a software tool such as Arvin you can use. Arvin is one tool that you can use. MS Access also, I had seen that there was this one. Or MS Visio also gives you an ability to create this entity relationship diagram. Equally, also Enterprise Spark system. Enterprise Spark also is one more. So when you're trying to depict your information, or when you're trying to depict depict the information regarding to how your data is going to be managed, stored, organized, managed, related, that's where your data models do come into play. So this also is a very important modeling techniques which is applied or used by a business analyst in order to incorporate the enhancements which are subjected by ever-changing market conditions. And now you also have something called as business interaction models, which, as I said, all these modeling techniques are the techniques which are available for a BA. Depending on the context, he has to pick and choose the most appropriate or a combination of appropriate modeling techniques to apply in that particular context. So you have a business interaction model. When do you go for a business interaction model? Business interaction model is all about how your business talks to other businesses. Like if you talk about Amazon, your Amazon as a website does also talk to a lot of payment gateways. So when it is speaking to the payment gateways and all, there are other systems which are there. It also speaks to other banks also, like Visa, MasterCard. So your system talking to how many systems can be depicted as business interaction model. Organizational model basically depict the organizational structure in terms of CEO, in terms of what the hierarchies were there. That's a very good model that you can use when you're trying to profile your stakeholders. You also have something called as location models. Location models basically talk about where all your organization is located. That's where your location model comes into. Goal model is where you wish to reach or what you wish to achieve. In order to achieve that particular goal, what is the impact it is going to have on your current enterprise architecture is something what we call it as impact models. Network diagrams and system models are nothing but how your network is connected by means of what kind of connectivity, hardware, software, what are the servers you use, what is the physical connectivity you have, what is the how your systems are connected, what kinds of systems you have, what is the network you have. All that is your network diagrams and system models is something you use. There are a couple of more models which are like class diagram is there. Class diagram is very technical in nature. This is basically comes into TSD document. When I talk about TSD, it is technical specification document, and it's basically TSD is nothing but it's a representation of your code. It's like class diagrams can be forward engineered and generated into a code, but internal logic would have to be written by us. So it's usually the class diagrams are a part of TSD. Sequence diagram also, I've seen when you go for a low-level sequence diagram, it's basically close to implementation, but there are sometimes BAPOC puts sequence diagrams into the perspective of business analysis, where we show as to how objects interact with each other to achieve a particular objective. So these are the lot of modeling techniques which are available. We have put them into our modes. So I have classified them into different models or different buckets of your process models. These are the models that a business analyst can use. When it comes to information models, these are the models. When it comes to other models, these are the models. And there is one more bucket apart from this, which is also used, which is not being spoken here, but that is basically to depict which we put it into the wireframes. And to use wireframes is nothing but depiction of your graphical interfaces, and that's where you use wireframes or prototypes. So in order to create these wireframes or prototypes and all, you may use certain tools and techniques such as Balsamic is one, and Pencil is again one more tool that you use. So when you speak about all these modeling techniques, these are the prominent modeling techniques which are used by a business analyst to perform business analysis, and more so when he's doing analysis. So there are a lot of modeling techniques available, but the most popular modeling techniques which as a business analyst that you should be aware of, and you should thoroughly not only understand, but also you would have to apply. I would say you would have to have a very clear understanding about use case model. When we talk about a use case model, what's the purpose of a use case model? It is basically with the purpose of trying to depict the interaction between an actor and system. And when we talk about in what context you have to use a use case diagram, it's basically when you have to show interactions between actors and or the users of the system and the system. Use case specification talks about how that use case gets executed. When we talk in terms of what is the description of a use case, what are the preconditions which are required for that use case to be executed, what are the post conditions that is after the use case is executed, your normal flow of event, alternate flow of event, exceptional flow of events. All these are the documentation that you capture in something we call it as use case description document. A very important use case talks about the functionality. A depiction of the functionality in terms of documentation is use case specification. And a diagrammatic representation of the normal flow, alternate flow, and exceptional flow can be an activity diagram. There is a flow that is continuing, see here. And an activity diagram, workflow diagram, and swim lane diagram are also basically used for process flows. You also have data flow diagrams, which are also exclusively used. When you're trying to depict a database and how data elements are related with each other, how the data is captured, organized, stored, accessed, manipulated, transactions done. For all such, you refer to data models, where you further break it down to the top one being conceptual, then you go to logical and information model. You have so many other models also, which is purely at the discretion of business analysts. Depending on the context, you can use all these modeling techniques. But the most popular that you will come across when you talk in terms of both predictive, adaptive, when I use predictive or adaptive, I'm basically talking about waterfall or agile. In waterfall, we basically come across, you will definitely come across use case model, use case specification, workflow diagrams, and your data models will be there. Object state transition diagrams also, you may come across them. And similarly, when we speak about your agile approach, where use case has to be, user story when it has to be decomposed, you will decompose it into a business rules, workflow diagram, wireframes, and all the details. When you break it down, that's where your modeling techniques are used and all. So definitely, as a business analyst, you should be thoroughly aware of all the modeling techniques which are available, which are popularly used. You should be definitely having a thorough knowledge about what is the purpose of each modeling technique, when to apply each particular technique, and in what context which particular modeling technique is best applicable. And the most popular modeling techniques you should definitely be aware of is use case model, use case specification document, your workflow diagram, activity diagram, your data flow diagrams, your wireframes, object state transition diagrams, and data models are again the other modeling techniques which which you would commonly come across in any of the project that you basically working on. So this was just a this was all about the modeling techniques and how these modeling what are the kinds of modeling techniques which are available, and what is the purpose of each particular modeling technique is what I spoke about. A further more elaborate session we will take up of applying these modeling techniques in our subsequent sessions. So once again, I thank you all and welcome to all of you on behalf of Ace Energy Solutions. Thank you. Yeah, if you have any questions and all, please feel to drop them to our mail ID, which is info@acenergy.com, and those details are provided in the presentation itself. Thank you once again.